figuring out how to use technology and then in particular use AI to allow us to scale so rapidly. And so we started making AI agents and using AI for all different things throughout the business. We're able to ensure that that business is not going to set any money on fire. They know it's going to work, and they're actually going to get the outcome they're looking for rather than making a bet and hoping it works.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. What is happening, people? I hope you are doing well. Welcome back to another powerful, cozy episode of Marketing by Design. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and we were just baited with the thing that they call fake spring. It was about 70 degrees last week here in February, and I'm looking outside on the weekend as I'm recording this, and it is snowing. So I hope your weekend and your Sunday is going a lot better than mine. But I am feeling a lot better now because our guest today is the one and only Harley Allaby of Samurai Code. Harley is a close friend of mine, a bit of a role model and mentor figure on the entrepreneurship space. He worked at a company called Exact Medicare in their sales and marketing division and helped scale that company to the moon. If you guys are from the Ohio region and you've heard anything about the company Exact Medicare, they have just accomplished so many things with such a strong, mighty leadership team, and they're one of the best case studies of Ohio success businesses here locally. But since then, Harley, being the high performer that he is, has gone on to start his own startup called Samurai Code. And that's what we're going to be learning about from Harley today. Over 90% of AI implementations fail, especially while we're still in this experimental phase. And by the way, guys, the adoption curve of AI from all the people that we've learned from on this show and just worldwide is much slower than people are letting on. Obviously, things are moving incredibly fast. I think one of the best mindsets to take when trying to learn and adopt these things is to have a focused learning session from a true expert once every couple weeks. If you try and keep up with the news that's going on every single day, every single hour, you're just going to overwhelm yourself and get burnt out on the topic as a whole. But regardless, it's always nice to know what successful entrepreneurs are doing with AI. Harley, Jeremy, and Jeremiah all worked at Exact Medicare, and they went to start the startup on their own, and they have not looked back since. Today, we're going to be learning from Harley exactly how to identify the highest leverage point that AI could fit within your specific business. Especially as a marketer, there's a million different applications and use cases. You're going to walk away with a little bit of clarity on knowing exactly where this fits. We're going to learn why context is especially important when using AI and maybe some funny examples of when that was used incorrectly, and two very important data/infrastructure steps that you need to be putting in place before going full bore on using LLMs for your marketing or your business. All right, that is enough for me. Let's jump straight into this episode with Harley. But before we dive in, I have a resource to share with you guys. Big news, we recently rebranded. Our new domain is mmg.studio, offering the same services, web design development, and website lead generation. And we have a new resource to commemorate that. We compiled a Figma file over 100 websites for you specifically to browse if you need website inspiration. These are some of the highest converting sections and layouts that we're using on our own clients that we're sharing directly with you to give you a head start. Most website redesigns fail because they're starting behind the ball. They have to move too quickly and they're not referencing the right things. I've solved that problem for you, and that will be in the first link below. Highly encourage you to take me up on that. Without further ado, let's learn today from the one and only Harley Allaby of Samurai Code by Design.
Yeah, man, I have always been an entrepreneur. It's been in my DNA for a long time. I think it's just the way God made me. Even when I was just a kid in school, I was always running a game, trying to, make a buck here or there, be it selling, you know, freaking Pokemon cards or Game Boys when they were hot when I was in school. So then down the road, doing real business. So, I kind of did my first experience in it in real estate. I got my real estate license when I turned 18 and started working in real estate. But at the same time, I was working at Apple because I was just really into technology. I think technology is magic. And so just being able to be around technology was a big deal for me. And that's actually where I met my co-founders. So I met them at Apple a decade ago. We've been able to
Mhm.
stay together for 10 years, doing different stuff
Nice.
along the way, which has been really cool. So from there, I ended up doing a little bit of business in the roofing space and built this big window program. And then eventually got into insurance, most recently with Exact Medicare, which is this awesome insurance shop in town helping folks with their Medicare plans. And that has been a rocket ship for me. You're able to grow it from basically a couple people and doing like $1 million in revenue to like 800 people and doing like $100 million in revenue in 3 years. And so that experience has just been unbelievable. And the part of that I enjoyed the most was figuring out how to use technology and then in particular use AI to allow us to scale so rapidly. We had to figure it
Mhm.
out just to make the business work. And so we started making AI agents and using AI for all different things throughout the business. As I was doing that for Exact, I just was like, man, this is what I love. I want to take this to other businesses and do this for other businesses because it gave Exact a real edge. And, Exact, while $100 million is a lot, it's a big business. It's not when you think of the big guys that are out there that are doing hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. But we were able to help Exact have technology that is probably better than what those companies are using right now. And they had a real edge because of it. And so I want to do the same thing for other businesses that are in my backyard so that they can get ahead of these big companies.
Mm. What do you think is the biggest like differentiator between the bigger companies, what they have access to, and maybe a startup, a small business who's maybe doing a lot of the self implementation for themselves or trying to learn the tools as they go and run the business at the same time? What are some of the things that maybe you were experimenting with at Exact that you can kind of like blow people's mind with now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, like these big companies are able to burn the time and resources and money that it takes to figure out an AI solution so that they get it right. And they're willing to set a bunch of money on fire to get there. And then they know that once they figure it out, they'll make all that money back hand over fist, but they have the risk capital to do that. Your average small business cannot handle that kind of resource drain. You just don't have the money or the time to do it. And so you have to get it right. And so that's really where, we love that we can solve that problem is we're able to ensure that that business is not going to set any money on fire. They know it's going to work and they're actually going to get the outcome they're looking for rather than making a bet and hoping it works. And now, you know, they're in trouble because they bought a sword, like we like to say, that they didn't know how to
Mhm.
use instead of hiring a samurai. Exact, some of the stuff we did that I think was really exciting is we were able to create like an AI intake agent. A customer would call and AI would answer that call. And AI was basically the front door of Exact. And so we could use that to qualify customers on the sales side so that, our agents weren't wasting their time talking to people who couldn't buy, and that was a big deal. But we were also able to use it to solve some of the problems on the customer service side. That way, our care team agents were spending more of their time solving problems that only they could rather than, handling things that are pretty simple, like what's my ID number or what's my copay to see a primary care doctor or something like that.
What's usually the first 1 to 2 things that you guys are doing when you do an assessment? Say, like, you come and do a startup for the first time. Maybe they say AI is not even something that they've experimented with. How are you
Yeah.
kind of positioning their, taking them to that end ideal state to where they don't have anything now? And then, maybe this is the first step, the 301 simplified version of this is our maybe usually one of our first actions. Maybe it's on the intake side, like you just mentioned, or more specific use case. And how do you present that to them and get your foot in the door that way?
Yeah, man. I feel like when we are working with businesses, there's two ways we can go. You have the way that I, really like to go, which is what's the highest leverage option? Essentially, what is the constraint of the business that's going to be unlocked if we're able to bring AI into that as a problem? So, like, as an example, let's say you have so many leads coming in the door, but you don't have enough salespeople to work with those leads. So your business isn't going to grow until you solve that problem. Well, that would be likely the biggest constraint in the organization. So that's a really fun spot to insert AI because we know we're going to get the biggest ROI the fastest. I love doing that. But
Mhm.
sometimes that isn't the right place to start because those are often bigger, harder problems to solve that are going to take a little longer. And so the other option is we look for the low hanging fruit. What is an area of the business that we're going to be able to create an AI agent for the quickest? And maybe it's not going to revolutionize the business, but it'll definitely make them some extra money or save them some money, get a taste for how amazing this really is. And then we can go on to the big one and start to work through the business and creating custom agents for each use case where it makes sense.
A lot of my experimentation so far has been around automation and doing
Yeah.
more because I like personally, we have a goal to remain really lean. And I think there's kind of like two sides, people that are scale at all costs and people who are like, how can I scale myself and my own like limited constraint resources further and sort of play with that a little bit. Like, I think a lot of people are bullish on either end, and there's solutions for both, kind of based on what their goals are, and also for what budget allows, and also industry plays a big role in that too. But what I do want to ask you is, what are some of the things since you switched more into direct implementation? You probably have a little bit more freedom since you guys are doing this more at Samurai. But what are some of the things that you've learned, even just since starting, that maybe piqued your curiosity for future uses of AI that you haven't previously thought possible? Or maybe things that you've learned sort of on the job that have had like a really high ROI value and maybe something that you want to be interested in maybe pursuing further?
Yeah, I think some of the beauty of this is like for the most part our options are only limited to our creativity, so it's just like, you know, as we get in and we're talking to these different owners and we're seeing different potential use cases, we always have like a handful of the same ones, something to help talk to customers, something to help, automate this process on the back end. But then every now and again we just like hear a unique one that we maybe wouldn't have expected. There's a lot of cool things that you're able to do around training that I think can be forgotten, right? Like if you're a business and you're onboarding a new employee, you hire this person and they're not providing any value to your organization until they're fully trained up. And so if we can accelerate that person's training ability by using AI so that they have a tutor, essentially a one-on-one tutor that isn't you as the business owner or your most valuable employee, we can maybe get somebody trained in half the time, and then in turn, you're seeing a return on that investment in half the time. And so that's a really fun one. I come from sales as a background. And so being able to use it in sales training, I think, is a really great one because you can test out objections and you can have your salespeople do like role plays, but with AI personas so that they're getting these live reps essentially without burning your leads. So that's a really fun use case that I think we're seeing some people use.
Yeah, that's nice. I think the biggest takeaway too is that it's very tailorable. It's very personalizable. I think a lot of people, and this will kind of tee up our next question, is that they have a lot of misconceptions around how like a general use case. So you'll see like a YouTube video or something like that, which is usually kind of your first touch point with maybe a case study, or people see an ad and they try and DIY an approach. And a lot of times it is templated and cookie cutter. So there's a lot of misconceptions around what AI is if you are just dabbling and you're not fully enabled yet. So, are there any misconceptions that you hear? I hear a lot when we talk to startups that there's a lot of lack of personalization, it's expensive, it's not going to actually drive results because they haven't dove in and done the testing and the implementation for themselves. And there's a lot of, it's kind of a black box for them in terms of how they could get started. But what are some of these like misconceptions that you're probably disproving or that you're hearing when you're talking to potential clients or people that you can use AI to help their businesses?
Yeah, well, Andy, I think the thing that I don't want to miss on what you were saying is that's not necessarily a misconception. Like Fortune just put out this article that has been going around that referenced this MIT study that talked about how 95% of AI implementations have failed that these companies have been trying to do themselves. And
Okay.
it then goes in and explains why. And the 5% that have worked is because they had AI experts involved in those implementations specifically. And so what we're seeing happen is exactly what you're describing, where organizations are like, okay, we know we need to use AI, so let's just go and do it. And then they go and get this tool that is, supposed to be the AI tool that's going to change their lives, change their business, and it falls on its face. And that's mostly because it's a generic tool or it's your traditional SaaS product that isn't really built for AI anyway, that they just tried to squeeze AI into, and those aren't going to work. And so to get real business results, to dig into the business and then, yeah, to your point, tailor that AI to the business itself rather than try to work the other way around and, make your business fit into AI. That defeats the point. And so that's what we do when we meet with these businesses is we sit down with them and we go through all the processes, we go through all their people, we look at all of their systems, and we're going to craft an AI agent that's going to work with those things that they already have in place. And then we're going to teach the team how to interact with that AI agent so that they're not freaked out by it and that
Mhm.
they see the benefits too. Because at the end of the day, like our goal is to free up people so they can go and do work that is more important, that is more enjoyable. We want to replace tasks that are mundane and don't bring people alive so that if you've got this amazing receptionist, Brenda, she's not spending all of her time just like booking appointments for customers. She's spending her time delighting those customers instead. And
Mhm.
so, we're really tailoring those solutions in order to get there.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, it comes with before you invest something, you have to have context to work with. So that's why I'm huge on when we talk to startups too. More like a lot of our leads come in for design and like external facing marketing. So a lot of times, what I'm telling them when they're approaching AI is to have a context window to work with, like everything that could be used as data, whether it's customer information, past calls, just some kind of central knowledge hub where you can really start to hit the ground running in terms of making an agent more personalized or making anything to something that you want to invest in more personalized. Say when you guys go to a startup, a small business, and what would make you say like, okay, this is a home run? Like we have a lot of fruit to kind of pull from that we can work with here. What does that look like? And how can a startup say, okay, if AI is something that I want to invest in the future, hire an implementer, how can I be ready to hit the ground running? What are some things that I should be keeping? Should I be paying attention on my client phone calls, recording transcripts? I think having all that is really helpful. But are there any maybe different ones other than some of the basics that you hear out there that people can really be keeping at the top of mind?
Yeah, the things that tend to create the most resistance for us up front are having your data in a working order. And the average
Mhm.
small business does not have like proper databases in place. A lot of them are operating on spreadsheets over here. They've got this legacy software that's 10 years old over here. And the data is just all over the place. And
Mhm.
so that's sometimes a service that we have to provide before we can even get into doing the main thing we want to do, which is creating the AI agent. Well, we've got to get the data for that business in order first so that it's then actionable. So like you kind of started to really hit it on the head there, Andy. It's like having good high quality data standards and then having that data in a manner that can be referenced and updated so that the agent can really do work, right? If
Mhm.
it's only one way, then we've got a barrier we've got to solve there too. The other part of that is hopefully most of the software you're working on at this point is cloud based with, actual endpoints and APIs in place because we want to make sure that all of those softwares that your people interact with and then in turn your agents can interact with are talking to each other. And so the other thing we have to do a lot of times before we can even get started on the actual agent is ensuring that those softwares are talking to each other or sometimes even making middleware to make those softwares talk to each other if they don't do it naturally. Once we've
Mhm.
laid that foundation, now we can set an AI loose in the organization to do all kinds of amazing things and create 40% efficiency for these businesses, but we've got to kind of take care of those things first. So I would say those are really the big ones if you want to nail an AI launch.
Mm. Talk to me about tool stacks. So let's zoom in a little bit and get a little bit more tactical. So if I am a startup founder or if I am someone who wants to dabble in maybe the self-implementation route so that I have some of these frameworks in place, if it's something I want to invest more into, what are some of the tools? I know there's a lot of third-party ones, and I think you and I talked about it last time, just how many are being released every day and how overwhelming it can be because they're
Yeah.
all revolutionary when they're first marketed, which I don't know if that's good or bad marketing, mostly bad.
Yeah.
But what are some of the ones that maybe you guys are using to innovate internally? Some of the ones that you are well versed in, and
Yeah.
also these are probably separate recommendations, but ones that are very beginner user friendly that people can get started with on their own.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of ones. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So,
Hmm.
if you're a software developer and you want to improve what you're able to do with AI, Lovable is a really powerful AI tool that
Hmm.
can help software developers. Cursor is incredibly popular. That's another great option on the software development side. If you're looking more for, agentic workflows. There's a really good one called N8N. That one's really popular and it's a great place to start. And then from there, it's not designed with AI in mind originally, but it's become a really popular AI tool, which is Make. So big fan of being able to use,
Hmm.
AI and Make and creating some really clever things there. All of those tools are going to be great options to look at. What's going to matter more than anything, though, is how you are training and, kind of taking it the next step as far as that agent is concerned so that you're getting the outcome you want. There's some tricks of the trade when it comes to setting up your agents. Using small language models instead of large language models is kind of an emerging trend. And there's some really cool things happening on that front that can get you a way better outcome than if you just try to stick in one giant knowledge base with one giant prompt and do that kind of thing.
Let's talk about that. So you said small language models versus large. What's the
Yeah.
difference, and what's the 301 of that?
Yeah, so you're limiting the context of the agent on purpose. So to give you an example of one that we did, we were working with a car dealership and we have one option which is we try to train one agent on everything about that car dealership, on every single car they make, on all of the service records they make, on all of the availability that they have, on all of these things and you end up with this giant context window that's really hard for the AI to reference at the right time and then you end up getting more inconsistent results. We
Hmm.
found that in, setting up that one, we were much more successful by chunking that down and having individual agents that were focused on specific things that could then communicate with each other. And so, we had one agent that was just an expert on the various car models. We had another agent that was an expert on the various financing types, and another agent that was an expert on servicing. And then those agents could communicate to get the outcome that was needed.
Okay. Tell me about one thing I did want to ask you about, sort of branching off of that, is what are you doing to you and your team doing to learn about this stuff as it comes out? Like what are some of the inputs that you're feeling with? I know we talked a little bit about this off camera, but how are you staying at the forefront of all of this stuff and putting it to work for your clients, or, you know, being innovating on the front of when all this stuff is changing? Because I know it can be super confusing. And that's why there's always the self-implementation route. There's always the I want to dive in, I want to learn these things. And that's when overwhelm can start to happen a lot, because there is just so much content being pushed out a lot of times. And a lot of founders, they have to run their own businesses. So you kind of have to know where that greatest leverage point is. So talk to me about what you're doing to learn, how you're staying at the forefront. If there's any good content that people can consume, to really make sure that they're kind of staying at the forefront of some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, there are four companies that are pushing everything forward right now. So it's OpenAI and Sam Altman. It's Elon with Grok doing some really impressive things there. It's Google and Gemini, and then kind of taking a back seat, but trying to still be in the game is Meta and Mark Zuckerberg. Everything else that we're seeing come out of AI are really downstream from what those companies are doing today. So the easiest thing is just like stay tight in with what that group is doing. Read everything that Elon tweets, read everything that Sam Altman tweets, pay very close attention to the way Google's working right now. Like, stay locked in there. From there, there's, some newsletters that I think are really helpful that I subscribe to. Super Intelligence is a really good one where they're constantly putting out some of the studies that have been happening. One that blew my mind recently along the route of those small language models is Microsoft was working on one and they made a bunch of these small language models and they ended up getting better results than doctors were getting at properly identifying conditions and like
Hmm.
diagnosing people. It was unbelievable. And
Hmm.
so we are constantly being updated on all of those sorts of use cases. And then we see those and we experiment with them. So, I'm not working, I'm not trying to cure cancer. Like I don't I'm gonna let the
Mhm.
smarter guys do that. But I want to learn from the principles that they applied and say, okay, how can I bring this into the setting that my customers would use? And then normally we just like to experiment on dumb stuff, right? So like
Mhm.
right now, my co-founder Zeke is working on an AI agent for fantasy football. And, we're going to make that, release it, and give it away because we love fantasy football. And it's a good way for us to play around with the emerging trends that are happening. And so, the whole business is changing every quarter, basically. And so
Right.
when one of those big changes comes out, it's like, what's a low stake way that we can play around with this, do something fun? And then, of course, once we nail it, we integrate it into our business and then we bring it to our customers.
Nice. Nice. What have you seen have the biggest leverage points in your own business? I know you guys are on the startup scene. You're kind of really hitting the marketing hard and really getting out there. What are some of the things, and this is a question I ask a lot, is what are some of the things that you're acting on, but you don't yet have the data to prove? Maybe you're doing it internally. Maybe it's one of these fantasy football experiences. What are some of the things that you maybe have an inclination that could be big in the future and it's subtly affecting the way that you're acting now, but it's not maybe something that's validated or has data to the point where you can recommend it to either your clients or people that are listening?
Man, that's a really great question, Andy. I think, we've been going really heavy into content recently, and the the leverage that we've been able to see by the various like AI and automation tools on the content space are unbelievable. So our chief brand officer has just been like living in that. And I think we're going to see it everywhere. I think we're going to see media teams just be able to X their output through
Mhm.
these tools from what they've been doing. It's unbelievable. In my experience, it can't I cannot get AI to make good designs. So I
Mhm.
think the designers of the world, like Andy, the work you do, yeah, I think AI's got a lot of catching up to do on that front. But when
Yeah.
it
Well,
comes to, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say there's so much that I'm experimenting with now in terms of what this agency, what this company, what design could be in the future. Like so much of what design is rapid iteration. And like you see, like especially for marketers listening, you have a traditional staff that can only work so fast. But what if you could have the key thing that a lot of people skip over and miss is just this element of taste. And the good thing about design is that taste can come from one person. It can come from a very strong sense of alignment and knowing what the business is, knowing what their goals are. So if you have that down, you can leverage this tool of iteration, just multiple concepts presenting and really compressing a timeline and getting that time to value a lot faster. Like some of the tools even that you mentioned, Lovable, Bolt, V0, these and more of the UI UX tools like Design Path. Reloom is one that I've used for over a year now. But if you align correctly in the beginning, and that's why I'm so big on like our alignment workshops and having something in the very beginning touch point to say like, okay, we have the context, we have the goals of the business. How is the design supporting that? Having that alignment in the beginning is what allows you to say, okay, we can capitalize on these tools that we have to then go in, present a lot of concepts a lot faster and really reach an end result quicker. So I think like, and you said it every day, like the industry is changing by the quarter, by the week. It's
Yeah.
like what a
Have you
designer looked like. Go ahead.
have you seen what Google put out with Nano Banana?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Dude, it's
That's
nuts. It's
that's what I'm
nuts.
talking about. Yeah, I know. It's every week it's gonna look like, okay, we have this traditional, that's why like job roles and the names behind them, I'm thinking is like it's gonna be such an abstract concept in the future because you say designer, if you say developer, a lot of times it's going to be an implementer of the tools that you have to have knowledge in and that you have to have experience with and have to have personalized, almost like case studies to be able to make relevant to this unique client or situation that you're working with. So it's, a lot of it is just pattern matching in terms of how you can use the tools to not just innovate internally and increase your own skill set, but to then match it to where it can have like the outsized value because context is so important in terms of what you give it, but also where you're applying it, right? Like if you try to use a design tool to, get more, and it's just the same philosophy of like if you try to redesign the website, but you're not getting any traffic to begin with. It's like this chicken or the egg scenario. More design concepts isn't going to help you if you're not getting inbound traffic to a page. Well, maybe the solution to that is you use some, a combination of like N8N or a VAPI agent to then go in and try and drive more cold traffic, or you set up LinkedIn automations to maybe a landing page or web page to then see what converts best from the designs that you did generate. So a lot of it is just a social awareness of knowing what tools to apply where. I think that's one of you guys' biggest value props is sort of the matching of saying, okay, this is what the business is, what the goals are. And this is like the one point of friction where, we can use that sword and, generate the greatest outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I,
Yeah.
I just think to your point too, like it's going to require all of us to become strategists. Like in the near future, there's going to be so much less execution type roles because we'll be able to have AI do so much more of that execution. The joy of that
Mhm.
is it means we get to deploy more creativity and we get to focus more on strategy. But I do think we've forgotten how to do a lot of that work because it's so
Yeah.
focused on these execution tasks. But nobody loves, doing stamping the machine over and over again. Like that doesn't bring
Yeah.
anybody joy. So I'm excited to see those shifts happen as this technology continues to develop.
Yeah. I think the correct, and this is definitely something we talked about, but people who have like the reservationist sort of marriage to what their workflow or what their day or what their interaction to the computer or any traditional software, if you have marriage to the normal and what you've been doing for a long time, that creates emotion and emotion makes you not want to change. And then that's where it actually starts to become a detriment is that you just aren't acting quick enough to be able to use it to its full advantage. When in reality, if you take a step back and you say from the beginning, I can actually leverage what I love to do more and add more value through that with these new things and then not be so attached to the delivery mechanism or what your experience looks like to deliver it. I think at the end of the day, we're all helping businesses grow and whatever our delivery mechanism is for do that, it's our point to say, okay, this is either a referral situation where you're not what we do is not aligned to get you the biggest results out of your internal problem, or it's I'm going to figure this out and make a recommendation for you that maybe isn't our traditional workflow. And that's why I think consultants and lean businesses are uniquely positioned because they have that advantage to where they can say, okay, we're not blacklined by this payroll and this huge team and these default processes to then not be nimble enough to take on maybe abstract projects where we're learning a little bit on the fly. We're trying new tools that could really have this outsized benefit to you. And you can also custom scope a lot more when, you can really dive in and create a unique solution. That's what these tools allow for. So yeah, man, I think people like us are uniquely positioned to be able to not just help, but also make more custom solutions and learn on the fly a little bit more.
Yeah,
One thing
man.
I
And,
go ahead.
and like the future is custom. Like everyone at the end of the day wants a solution that is made perfect for them, right? And hopefully, let's say you're trying to buy a new suit. Like, I think if you go in and you're getting a truly bespoke suit, and this is a template that they're making based on you, I don't know that that's going to be the right solution for everybody, but we definitely want everything to be tailored. We want it to fit right. We can't have it too loose in the shoulders. And we've been seeing in businesses, like with these SaaS products typically, it's like not quite right. It does 80% of what you need it to do. 20% you're like, well, I guess I'll change everything I do to make it fit this product that I just spent a bunch of money on. Or, you're working with somebody and they're like, well, yeah, but that's not how we do things. And you're like, well, I really like 80% of this. So I guess it'll be fine. And I'll just be mad about the other 20%. And so when you're able to actually like have the agility and have the efficiency in your business because AI is allowing you to do it internally to go, actually, no big deal, man. I'll just build that. I'll do that thing. And you're able to deliver on that now when you weren't before because you've developed the efficiency through the AI tools that are operating in your business. That's a huge deal. And it just makes
Mhm.
everything better for everybody.
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask you too, kind of branching off on that is a lot of people when they're approaching AI for the first time, I said it is a bit of a black box for them. And maybe it's one of these things where they feel like it's a like under the napkin sort of closed door talk. Like none of our competitors want to really talk about what they're doing because maybe it's generating results that they don't want us to know about. In your experience with startups, with implementing it at Exact, how often is it the case that people's competitors are already innovating on these things and that they need to implement it in order to catch up? Or is it something that when they do start the 0 to 1, when they do a kickoff, when they start to, have the bare minimum that they're already ahead. How many can you give me a rough sense kind of how many people are already acting on this stuff versus, maybe in that deliberations phase where they haven't taken the first step yet?
Yeah, I think the big guys out there, the publicly traded companies, they are already working on this and have been for a while. And so if you have a Fortune 500 company that you consider your competitor and you're not doing something with AI, like you're behind. And the leverage that AI is creating is giving those guys the opportunity to come for your lunch more than it has ever existed before. I would say when you're talking on a more local basis, if you're looking at maybe you're more, let's say you're a medium-sized business, you're looking at other medium-sized businesses that you're competing with, most of those companies are at the stage where they're like, man, I know I need to use AI, but we'll get to it, or it's on our list, or I don't know where to start. And they're just not really jumping in. And so there's definitely still an opportunity to get in early and have a speed advantage over your local competitors. You've got a chance.
Mhm.
We've got catching up to do if we're trying to keep up with the Fortune 500 companies of the world.
Yeah, that's a good point because a lot of times, like I said, when it is a black box for people, they're hesitant to start the conversation because they don't want to look stupid or they don't want to look like they're behind. And a lot of people are friends with their competitors. I think, especially if you're a medium sized business, if you have any level of establishment, you're usually, and this is contrarian to what a lot of people think, is that you're usually on a relationship slash talking
Yeah.
level with a lot of your competitors. Like, I don't know why it's always such a hustle scene and there's just that misconception. But when you actually get into it, you see like a lot of these people actually know each other. But I see a lot of it getting kind of like shoved under the table. And it's not, people talk about it, but I feel like a lot of times they're kind of peacocking in terms of like how much they actually know and how much
Mm,
they're actually using it because at the same time they feel like this person that they're talking to who probably hasn't used it either isn't really implementing it to begin with. And they're worried about
right.
what they might think. So there's a little bit of peacocking that goes on there. And I think transparency is what helps because, like I said, outside of design, there's so much like agentic stuff. There's so much that I don't know. And that's a big reason that I have this show is to kind of learn along the way and also position the value for people who want to implement it in more of a less niche specific case and just get started with it. Because that's like the case with anything is everything's abstract, unquantifiable until you just acknowledge that, whether it's losing weight or eating healthier or, starting a new habit, writing, journaling, taking walks, anything, everything is scary before you get started. I think there's a huge lesson to take away from that with this. And having the conversations, consulting with an expert is one of the best ways to make it less ideological and more tangible. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
after listening to this podcast, the first thing I can do is either get in touch with this person, it's downloading the software, it's tampering with myself. Um, so I think that's a big part of, just getting started with anything. But I want to kind of turn the mic on you a little bit and say, what was your like first experience, like rewind the clock, whether it was with when you were with Exact or you were dabbling and doing some lower risk, fantasy football type experimentations on your own, where you really had a moment where you're like, wow, this is something that we need to pay attention to dive more in on when it came to AI.
I mean, I think like many people, when AI really jumped out for me is when ChatGPT came onto the scene in like a major way. So like 3 years ago is when I first really started experiencing AI. And it's amazing how much better it is now than it was then. And back then it was unbelievable. But just the idea that I had, you know, a relatively informed answer to every question I could ask that was so much more tailored than what you would get from a search engine was unbelievable. I mean, one of the silly things that I did is I'm a big SNL fan, and I wanted to try and rank the best SNL casts based on the success of the individual cast members post SNL. So I created this
Hmm.
rating scale where if you had, if you starred in a movie that crushed it, it was worth 10 points. If the movie kind of flopped, it was worth 5 points. I did this whole rating scale. And so I gave that rating scale to AI and I had to analyze every single outcome that these cast members experienced and then rank and then tell me what the best cast was.
Uh-huh.
Dude, if I wouldn't to do that directly myself, it would have taken me like 15 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have taken me forever.
Uh-huh.
And and I saved 15 hours in that one moment. And then it's like, gosh, where else can we apply this kind of thing?
Yeah. Dude, and like designers and specific can relate to this is like this is something that I used to just like not even consider would take my whole day. And I just did it in like 3 clicks. That's the leverage, right? That's that creates what creates that like that light bulb moment where you're like, holy shit, like this is something that we need to pay attention to. And that came to life too when, like I said, the rapid iteration, we generated like a whole wireframe for a site at the click of a button. And obviously there's some personalization and matching it to the tape, but just the duplicating, like the physical, like man, like I'm going through the pixels, I'm moving everything manually, I'm taking the mouse and I'm dragging it across the screen. That stuff is that's nowadays I see that as a signal to like what is the first leverage point to where I can use AI or I can use a tool to start to help me out on this. And I encourage anyone that's listening to think, what is the part of your business to where, okay, maybe the design application is dragging flex boxes or duplicating frames or copy pasting text. Like, what is the AI application of that to my business? And either dabbling in it for yourself or starting a conversation with some experts in order to get you on the right track.
Yeah, man. And it's just like it is just as far as you can take it. You know, we're
Uh-huh.
seeing companies today grow without adding headcount. That is unheard of. It's just
Uh,
that doesn't happen. You're seeing startups hit revenue per employee numbers of $500,000. $1,000 per employee is unheard of. And in the era of AI, that's possible and it never was before. And so
uh-huh.
it's like if you're willing to go on that journey, the pot of gold at the end of the tunnel is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. The last thing I wanted to ask you today, because I think it's a good place to like kind of land the plane, is talk to me a little about your team and everything, the visions for the company, Samurai. I know you guys are a startup and you're working with some interesting clients right now and getting some great results. But talk to me about the company as a whole a little bit, the rock stars that you have on the team, and what is sort of your purpose and mission as you start to work with more businesses and sort of flesh out the picture in the future.
Yeah, man. So, the company was founded by me and my co-founder, Zeke Negron, who I've known for a decade. He's our CTO, so he's the brains of the operations. I'm just here because I look good. But we've also got some other folks on the team that are able to help us really crush some of these projects. Some amazing database architects, some technical project managers that just live in AI every day and workflow creation and those kinds of things. Technical group, lots of smarties. Zeke got into Harvard and he's leading the charge there. So
Mhm.
just these just absolutely brilliant guys. And ultimately, the goal for us is to work with these small and medium businesses and give them access to the same kind of technology that the big guys have so that they can get ahead and stay ahead. That's what we want to do. I love small business and the fact that the local hardware store knows the people in the community is a big deal. And I want that local hardware store to crush it for a long time. And they just provide all of this amazing expertise that, you know, is missed at Home Depot, right? And
Uh,
how can we help this local hardware store have the same edge and then a better edge than Home Depot? Because not only are they going to have this amazing technology, but they know the area, they know their customers, and so now they are operating on a playing field that Home Depot is wishing they could. And so that's the kind of edge that we want to provide for these
uh-huh,
companies so they can get ahead and stay ahead. And right now, that primarily looks like AI agents. As technology continues to develop and change, we partner with these companies so that you're never working on anything outdated. But currently, it's heavily emphasized on creating AI agents in your business to free up your people, to free up your time so you can go and do the work that you love and achieve your goals much sooner than you would be able to otherwise.